Postcards from Beyond, written and narrated by Paul Harris. Holy smoke. Nibbana is the goal of all authentic religious and spiritual traditions. It is gnosis, the complete, unimpeded and non-conceptual understanding of the way life really is. A single moment of perfect illumination that renders obsolete all of those unanswered questions with regard to existence, such as whether there is a creator God or a divine plan to life, and whether or not we continue to exist after death. With the help of the Buddha's teaching and sufficient endeavour, it's possible for anyone to realize Nibbana themselves. The Buddha called his training Brahmacharya, the holy life, precisely because it leads to this divine or pure realization. Given the universal and transcendental nature of the goal, and the roles that faith, devotion, and surrender play in walking the path, a question often asked is whether or not Buddhism constitutes a religion. Buddha Dhamma is fundamentally non-theistic, and one of its core principles is that deliverance is only possible through individual effort. If we define religion as a body of beliefs and practices regarding the supernatural and the worship of one or more deities, then strictly speaking, Buddhism is not a religion. This is because, although there are spiritual practices and a well-defined belief system, there is no worship, and most definitely no possibility of salvation through faith alone. One needs to investigate one's experience to generate insight wisdom in order to destroy attachments first. Even attachment to the Buddha's own teaching has, ultimately, to be surrendered. The very system he devised is to be transcended. Yet visit traditional Buddhist countries and you find plenty of evidence of Buddhism meeting people's emotional needs by fulfilling the role of a traditional religion. I remember, many years ago, standing outside a famous temple in Kandy, Sri Lanka, and watching as a well-dressed man jumped off his moped, prostrated himself before the temple gates, and started praying to the Buddha for a successful day at the office. Well, that's what it looked like to me. I was somewhat surprised at the time, because for me, one of the great attractions of Buddha Dhamma has always been the emphasis on personal investigation and verification through direct experience, with a definite absence of superstition and wishful thinking. It all begins to make more sense, however, if we give religion a much broader definition, such as something we put our faith, loyalty, or devotion in to help us through the difficulties of life. Although this means that anything, football, music, or even science, could conceivably qualify as being religion, nonetheless, it is in just this way that Buddhism is popularly used. Further, it's clear that not everyone on this planet is consciously intent on realizing Nibbana. Everyone has lessons to learn, but for most, the idea of spiritual enlightenment is too remote a possibility to be taken seriously, or just does not figure at all in their worldview. What the majority of people want from a religious teaching is a clear ethical framework so that they are able to live life well here and now, with a reassurance about what will be in store for them when they die. In other words, they want enough of an explanation of things so that they can put their existential uncertainty to one side and get on with living life. So ceremony and ritual plays a central role in their lives as a way of reconfirming their faith in what they believe. It's lovely to see genuine reverence and devotion openly displayed, and people from traditionally Buddhist countries seem to have an innate understanding of how to perform rituals and ceremonies in gentle, unassuming ways. Singing, chanting, reciting holy verse, prostration, and burning incense. These things can focus the mind and develop the intention to practice. They can also generate a peaceful and benevolent atmosphere, help to promote attitudes of piety, surrender, and joy, and instill a real community spirit and a sense of being part of a deeply rooted tradition. As such, ritual and ceremony can be useful. There are, however, also some very real dangers associated with them. One point at issue is that all too easily the original intentions behind a ritual are lost, and all that is left is the empty performance, the mere repetition of the form with no substance at all. Further, with the passing of time, ritual form is mistakenly taken to be the real teaching. The inevitable conclusion is that well-meaning people come to believe that through the mere repetition of such outward displays, along with the requisite degree of faith, deliverance can be won. It cannot. In Buddhism, students traditionally take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha in the form of chanting in the ancient languages of Pali or Sanskrit. Recollecting these three jewels definitely does help to promote joy and confidence, and these are ideal states of mind to establish if you want to meditate. Confusion can arise, however, if people start to believe that reciting the chant is what it means to take refuge. To take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha means to undertake the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path in earnest. One is protected from the vicissitudes of life only by bringing one's behaviour in line with the way reality works. The belief that somehow the chanting itself is a protection is a false notion. The Buddha explicitly rejected all forms of superstition. On one occasion, he criticized the popular idea that symbolic washing could possibly have the power to restore the individual to a state of purity. He quipped that if people could wash away their sins by bathing in sacred rivers, then all the turtles, crocodiles, and frogs would go to heaven. The mind is polluted by negative thoughts and unethical behaviour. No amount of humble supplication will ever be enough without the cultivation of the three trainings in ethical conduct, mental control, and wisdom to remove ignorance and craving. He called this the inner washing. Attachment to rule and ritual represents a very real block to meditative insight. It is rightly called a fetter, because it binds a person so tightly to the endless cycle of suffering. There must be the willingness to investigate your own subjective experience, and this means mindfully acknowledging aspects of life and your nature that you have always tried to hide from. This is very challenging work, and can be fearful and painful at times too, which is why developing attitudes of faith and devotion is so important. One can quite understand why people, through doubts, fear, laziness, or other misgivings, might prefer to defer from real practice, contenting themselves with religious pomp and ceremony, lulling themselves into believing that what they are doing is deeply meaningful and taking them in the right direction. The reality is, however, that beyond a certain level, reliance on ritual form is just sheer wishful thinking. If our habitual behaviour is ritualistic in nature, it means we tend to do things over and over in a bull at the gate type way, forever performing the same action, yet forever expecting a different result. We want one rule for all occasions, ostensibly so that we do not have to bother to think for ourselves, or go through the pain of learning. To live happily and successfully, however, requires that we be flexible to all of life's demands, by learning to take note of prevailing conditions and becoming skillful at adapting our approach to suit. This is especially true when it comes to meditation. The sad irony of attachment to rule and ritual is that it has the effect of inflating and reinforcing the very pride and self-regard that undertaking spiritual practices was supposed to be reducing. It strengthens the sense of duality, the sense of me as an entity separate from the rest of life, making us even more stubborn, inflexible, and resistant to change. This, consequently, takes us further away than ever from truth and freedom. If we go too far down the route of religious worship, then the goal of the Buddha's teaching is placed on such a high pedestal that people no longer believe it to be a realistic aim. I have read articles in Buddhist magazines that suggest the best we can hope for in our modern era is to refine our ethical behaviour and wait for more suitable conditions in a future life to realise Nibbana. This idea is sad, because it unwittingly reduces enlightenment itself to myth and superstition, as well as implying that the Noble Eightfold Path is not effective in certain conditions, none of which is true. Enlightenment is real and available right here, right now. People can and do find it. The Buddha's Four Noble Truths are timeless, and the path is currently available and supremely effective. While the Buddha was lying on his deathbed, a certain monk continued to meditate rather than going to pay him homage. When he heard of this, the Buddha praised the monk, saying, "He honours me best, who practices my teaching the best." Those genuinely intent on realising Nibbana need to keep a proper sense of proportion by recognising the limited value of rule and ritual, and understanding the difference between real practice and superstition. By restraining the urge to raise the goal up to unattainable levels, we can remain open to the truth that the answer lies very close to home and is most definitely within reach, but only if one's approach to the training is genuinely sincere, devoted, and humble.